Relations. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today as we talk about risk management and building resilience in today's world. We would wait for a couple of minutes for others to join, and I hope I'm audible to everyone. My voice is clear.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So a few more people have joined us. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining this session today, and we are happy to have you here. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Varinder. I'm a Client Relations Manager. Before I invite the presenters, I would like to introduce you to the organizers, MidCat and Bright Consult. Let's wait for some more people to join in so that I can introduce the organizers.
Varinder, I think we can carry on, please.
Yeah, okay, sure. Thank you so much for the go-ahead, Mr. Andir. So yes, I'd like to introduce the organizers, MidCat Bright Consult. MidCat Advisory is a leading Asian risk consultancy based out of India and Singapore, working with more than 50 of the top 100 global corporations in more than 40 countries and with 300 plus customers, including many of the leading global and Indian majors in banking, financial services, and insurance sector, information technology and enabled services, energy and power, pharma, oil and gas, etc. MidCat services include, some of them are AI-assisted platform-based customized threat and risk intelligence, physical security and safety consulting, business continuity and crisis management consulting, forensics and investigations, including NPA, security engineering and design, etc. Bright Consult is a leading management and consulting advisory services firm based out of Qatar, engaged predominantly with the semi-government sector, helping organizations become significantly more efficient, effective, and financially profitable. For those of you who just joined us, welcome again to this webinar, where we are going to talk about risk management and building resilience in today's world. So without further ado, let me introduce you to the experts who will talk on the topic today. First will be Ms. Shraddha Bhandari, Advisor, Market Entry and Operational Risk Management with MidCat. She will give us a brief overview of the regional risks, followed by Mr. Ranjit Sinha, Director, Strategic Initiatives, MidCat Advisory, who will take a session on managing risks to be resilient. And lastly, a demonstration of AI-assisted risk tracking platform. Meanwhile, should you have any questions, please park them for our Q&A session, which will be towards the end of the event, or you can also source your questions in the chat box for the addressing. I'm glad to inform you, all the attendees, that all the attendees of this webinar will be presented with a certificate of participation, which will be shared later on your registered email IDs. Without any delay, all right, let's dive in and start the webinar. I'm handing it over to Ms. Shraddha Bhandari to take the session.
Yeah. Shraddha, you're on mute.
Shraddha, you're on mute.
I'll just unmute myself. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Sorry, I look at risks, but technology is a particular pain point for me personally. Welcome, everyone. I know it's a Saturday, so you must really be invested in this risk management symposium to be attending it. So I'm very excited to be presenting. Risk management symposium for building resiliency is, I think, a very timely topic. We've heard it a number of times in the past sort of couple of months that the world is in a flux. Old established business markets are being challenged. Modes of distribution, production, supply chains, etc., are being stretched. The whole narrative of globalization is being questioned, right? So whether it's diversification, whether it's reshoring, whether it's getting production closer to home, there are opportunities abounding, right? But wherever there are opportunities, of course, there are risks that need to be managed. And I've interacted with MidCat's team quite frequently. And I think together with our innovative interactions, we can address what Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld said in early 2000s, what he called the unknowns, the risks that you don't know, right? So the companies may not know them, but rest assured that we're working overtime to know those risks and sort of help you navigate through them. So just in sort of my profile, I'm a market entry and op risk management advisor. I help companies look at geostrategic risks that are happening at what I call a global level. So global, national, local, and this region that we are addressing today, West Asia, Middle East, whatever you want to call it, is one of the regions which is very widely impacted by a lot of these risks. So just setting the context, I'm very happy that Middle East is being discussed. I'm fascinated with this region. There is a joke in my family that I was a Middle Eastern in my last life. And what I would just say that this, since at least the late 70s, early 1980s, this has been, just one second, Kunal, can I have the presentation, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. So just sort of setting the context. Middle East has been the mover and shaker of global geopolitical events since 1980s. Of course, it's gone through the entire cycle of being the hub of hydrocarbons, which is the sort of mover and shaker of the global economy. We've had conflicts, proxy wars, extremism, terrorism, sort of superpower rivalries materializing in this entire zone. But very recently, I've seen what I see sort of very positive trends of stabilization. Right, so it's all there in the news with Saudi Arabia, with the UAE, with Qatar, with Kuwait. There's a lot of structural reforms that are happening. There's economic diversification. There's an attempt to move from hydrocarbons, right? And business opportunities are growing. But as business opportunities grow, it's very, very important that we go beyond the glitz and glamour, right? So we have to sort of understand that there are risks at multiple levels that need to be addressed if you want to take advantage of this particular region. The regional risk landscape is very myriad. You've got the sort of traditional industries, risk related to energy, etc. Conventional op risk management has to be done. But this region is also moving very fast on digital and technology-driven risks, right? So there is an attempt to, example, build the NEOM city. There is an attempt to build the largest sort of energy platforms, metaverse, crypto, the buzzwords are all there. So to take advantage of what is being offered in this region in terms of opportunities, let's see how well we can manage these risks. The next slide, please, Kunal. Okay. Instead of giving my analysis of what I think are the risks, so I'm based here and I do a fair amount of work within the GCC and Balkans, etc. I thought I'll take you through the thought process that goes in when we're looking at a company entering a particular market, diversifying, building global supply chains, etc. So this is the kind of methodology that I use. It's called the global risks. So we look at risks impacting at a global level, at a regional level, at a local level. And all of these risks are very prominent in this geography. Right, so there's been a lot of buzz around very high energy prices and the fact that countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE are now going sort of great on budget. They've managed to cushion the fall of the inflation of food prices, etc. And that's marred the fact that this region is still very globally impacted. So just some figures, 60% according to a 2019-2020 survey. 60% of the GDP of a lot of these countries is still dependent on trade. And just to give you an analysis of what countries I'm looking at, the GCC economies, but also Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, and maybe Turkey when I draw on examples. Right, so this region is very heavily dependent on trade. Hydrocarbons remains their main sort of export that gives them the treasury, though there are attempts to diversify, etc. A lot of their structural reforms are based on the FDI coming in, right? And it's very highly impacted by what's happening in the larger geopolitical arena. So if I was to rate the global risks for this region, I would put the superpower rivalries, or the new great game as it's called, at the very top. Right, so both conflicts in the near abroad, which is within the region, and conflicts in other parts of the world, for example, Russia, Ukraine. What happens when the great game or the superpower rivalries intensify is, at the regional level, the existing conflicts get more complicated. And I'm not going to go into the details of, we all know about Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, etc. NATO and the Russian forces have squared off in Syria. There have been sort of proxy support of different regional powers in Yemen, and every time there is an intensification of rivalries between the great powers, the regional conflicts get more complicated, with spillover effects in a lot of the geographies that our businesses are operating in. So whether it's the Houthis striking the Saudi oil fields, or some of the proxy groups, terror attacks in different parts of the region, and that's something we have to look at. The impact of conflicts in other regions, of course, has impact on the regional conflicts, but also has repercussions in the economic realm, right? So the supply chain gets impacted. It's again obscured the fact because of high energy prices, but food, commodity, and energy price shocks remains one of the top risks that businesses keep asking us about, right? So this region is very vulnerable to what are the 3 C's, COVID, which not just COVID, but any sort of this black swan event, climate change, and now increasingly conflict, right? So there is an economic angle to it. In fact, there was a very good IMF report in 2019, 2020, which said that every time there is trade tensions between the 2 major powers, which is US and China, and the economy gets depressed, there is a knockoff of about 1 to 2% of the income that comes from the GDP that comes from hydrocarbons, right? So this region remains very sensitive to what's happening across the world. Very important as geopolitical analysts to keep sort of looking at how these trends are evolving. Another thing that the businesses want to know about is something that's called weaponization of trade and finance, right? So heavily under sanctions, massive entities in countries, individuals, etc., are today under some sort of sanction regime. So who can you deal with? Who can you trade with? What are the international payment systems that can you use? How will there be an impact if, for example, you violate some of these sanctions knowingly or unknowingly, right? In technology aspect, this is very interesting. There is, of course, technological advancements happening within the region, but this region is moving very fast. It's trying to catch up. It's trying to catch up in terms of reducing its hydrocarbon reliance. It's trying to tap into the new technology, the new age technology as it's called, so that it can get a lead over other nations. So metaverse is, for example, very big here. At least the buzz is very big, the crypto, blockchain, etc. But this region does not have the technological innovation or wherewithal to protect itself from risks. Here is where a lot of organizations like MidCat and others come in, because cyber attacks, denial of services, protection of critical assets is a very major focal point of not only the governments, but the businesses in this region as well. Right, and environment, I think enough has been said about it. We've been hearing news about extreme droughts, climate change, floods in different parts of the world. I mean, there were floods in Fujairah this year. There was massive rainfall that the UAE has not seen in 20 years. And there are also leading to resource conflicts in countries like Algeria, like sort of Yemen, like Lebanon, where it's the local dynamics are becoming more complicated by reducing arable land, for example. So there are obviously trends happening in terms of countries trying to wean away from their reliance on hydrocarbons. They're looking for agricultural land abroad. There's a lot of scope for example, hydroponics here, of vertical farming, et cetera, but that's something that's going to take time. And in the meantime, how this depresses the economy of the region, leading to either inflation or higher borrowing, higher debts, interest rates, is something that the businesses will very closely need to manage. Coming to the regional level, we've discussed some part of it. It's a very mired landscape in terms of what the countries are doing, the issues, sectarian conflicts, extremism, terrorism, proxy war, all of that still remains in the region. I'm not going to go into detail because I believe that a lot of these issues have peaked up, and now they're towards some sort of getting better, if I may say it. But up and downs keep happening. We've seen something in Iraq at the moment, in Libya, in Yemen. And these are something whose spillover effects companies will need to keep monitoring. One particular thing that I think everyone should closely look at are the governance related issues, right? So protests, civil unrest, we've seen in the last 5 years, practically almost every country in this region post the Arab Spring and then has been impacted by some sort of protest, civil unrest, people making use of social media to basically highlight that there are structural flaws within the economies, right? So the inflation, as I said, is high, the borrowing costs are very high, high debts, there's issue of employment. Till very recently, the labor market in Saudi, UAE, etc., Kuwait, Qatar has improved now, but till very recently, the unemployment was almost 30%. Right? There's a very high dependence on expat labor. A lot of new industries are coming up, but the local resources don't exist. I face this with companies day in and day out. So you're trying to build all of these new industries here, especially in technology, and the skilled manpower is just not available. So where do you get them from? How do you host them? How do you sponsor them? Those are things you need to look at. Again, you have to be very mindful of at a company level, what sort of cyber aspects you need to build. Of course, the government is giving a lot of support, a lot of these. So these kind of relationships have to be built. Just going on to a local level, and this is where I find things most interesting, because at a global and regional level, these things keep going on. They're a little long-term in their impact, but the local is what businesses generally don't look at, and they really need to navigate this, right? So there's high amount of economic competition in the region. There is an attempt to attract businesses to different geographies, right? So some countries will say, we will only give you government contracts if you have your headquarters in our country, for example, and that doesn't sit well with the other countries. So those are the kind of things that are happening, and certain sectors are very hard to penetrate, right? So when you're forming your strategy, you should be very sure what sector it is, who is it dominated by, what is the stake of the existing governments in it, high net worth individuals, etc. And then obviously there's socio-cultural specificity. There are some regions where you cannot, for example, have land ownership. There are some regions which are protected in terms of the communities that exist. Those typical community opposition, land ownership issues. Policy and regulations, it's very evolving. These countries are very new in terms of the policy and regulations that are making for different sectors. So it becomes very important that you scan wherever you're coming in, how you're expanding, also relationships with other countries around the world, and how you utilize, for example, the Jebel Ali free port, right? How do you use that to export to other countries and get better returns on your VAT or export trade, etc. Banking and financial systems, everybody who's lived here knows, especially in some of the GCC countries, how hard it is to sort of get your bank accounts on, and how do you navigate that? And land ownership, ownership of companies, how do you sort of affiliate with locals, how the cultural landscape has to be navigated are things that must be done either before you're entering a market or you're diversifying. So what I'm going to do is I am going to stop here in terms of the risks, and if there are any questions, I can take them later. I can go on and on about this. If I could just go to the last slide, please, Kunal. So just very, very briefly, because Ranjit, the next speaker, will be addressing all of that. A market entry plan must include risks at all levels, right? So you must do a mapping of how the geopolitics is evolving in the world, what are the probabilities, what are the scenario giving, how the events are going to sort of pan out, understand the culture, the local environment, the market and sectoral risks, and technology risks, of course. This is an entire pan spectrum that must be integrated into a market entry plan, right? And something that the companies have started doing now is stress tests, right? After the financial crisis in 2008, the banks were mandated to have stress tests, where you're checking your exposure to, for example, if there are sanctions against, for example, a Chinese company tomorrow, how exposed are you to that? Can you build diverse supply chains? If a market closes up, can you quickly access other markets? If there are local issues, can you move to another GCC country? All of these things need to be done, and how will you implement it via the main stakeholders? Right, so all of these are things that need to be inculcated in your planning. It's a region where there are a lot of opportunities, but as I said, risks also abound, and understanding and navigating the risks has to be the first step. So I'm going to stop here, and maybe we can take questions later if anybody wants me to dwell deeper on anything. Can I hand over to now Ranjit Sinha, please?
Yes, Shraddha, thank you so much. I think it was a great start putting things in context, and you really brought out a lot of important key stuff. key pointers which actually impact us today. And, not just the reason why it's happening, but also, it is prevalent all across, right? So, of course, as organizations, there are certain things that we have control over, and there are certain things that we do not have control over, right? So, but for an organization to function in a business, we need to be resilient. So that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about going ahead. So my name is Ranjit Sinha, and I am the Director for Strategic Initiatives for MedCat, responsible for large infrastructure projects, government projects, and projects which we do internationally. And today I will be talking about how to manage these risks and be resilient. So just give me a moment to present my screen. So are you able to see my screen? Can someone just confirm?
Yes,
Yes,
we are
Ranjit.
able to see.
Great. Thank you so much, sir. Right. So, like I was mentioning, there are certain things, there are certain factors which are under the control of organization. And there are certain that we cannot control, right? We cannot control the climate. But if we know what impact it can have, or if we know as to what or when is it going to strike us, a calamity, we can sort of prepare for that. Similarly, if we know, that yes, there is a potential of a untoward incident happening, or say a fire to take place, there are certain gaps in our systems, we can get prepared for that. So that is when we talk about resiliency, to be able to either avoid an untoward incident from happening, or if it occurs, how do we get back to doing business as usual, is the prime factor of resiliency that we'll be talking about. So how do we go about being resilient? But before that, what exactly are the events? What is it that troubles us, right, as an organization? So can I request, we have a lot of participants today, and a warm welcome to all the participants joining us from the region as well as across the globe. So a very warm welcome to all of you. And if I can request, what is it that you feel that troubles your organization, or as security professionals, what is it that sort of keeps you awake, keeps you troubled, something that you keep thinking about? Can you just please put it in the chat box quickly? What is it that troubles you? What do you think? What do you feel is something that keeps going on in your head, that if this happens, the organization is going to be in trouble, or my security is going to be in trouble? Okay, mutually exclusive legal environments. Okay, unexpected hikes in cost of living for employees. All right, I think very fair point. Very fair point, because it's going to impact how they go about doing it. What else? What else? What is it that, from a risk perspective, what is it that sort of troubles you? Okay, I'm also getting from Atosh, there are unwanted protests. Okay, of course, there can be protests which disrupt, right? So we are not able to do our function. Floods in geographical location, absolutely. Changing market scenarios, okay, great. Riots and strikes, absolutely great. Lack of skilled labor or issues with labor, great. Extraterritorial legislations, of course. Financial planning, great. So I think a lot of things. So, there are certain things which are external. There are certain incidents which are more internal, right? But all of them have an untoward incident or untoward impact on the organization, right? So if we can sort of club it and say, can we say that any occurrence that leads to unacceptable loss of life, or has a serious financial implication, or leads to a reputational loss, or any other serious impact on the organization, right? It will be something that troubles the security practitioners, troubles the leadership of the organization, right? Or anything else which can invite your negative external scrutiny. Social media is so prevalent today. We have smartphones, we have access to Twitter, we have access to Facebook, we have access to other applications, where you can pass on messages. there are audits which, if there are certain untoward findings, if they come out in the open, that can have an impact, right? So there are a lot of things that can have an impact on an organization, which is negative, which the organization needs to be prepared, right? I am also getting awareness of real issues that may arise. That is unawareness, absolutely right, on non-availability of material, right? Because of various reasons, wherein there is a supply chain disturbance, right? So it can have a lot of problem, lot of issues, right? So we talked about certain occurrences. If I look at it more from the internal perspective, what other occurrences can be there? What other threats can be there which can have an impact on the business? Can we also get what you need to be prepared, right? When we say we have to be resilient, we have to keep continuing our business. So we spoke about certain things earlier. We spoke about riots, we spoke about disturbances, we spoke about legal ramifications, we spoke about climate, right? Can be there. What else? Data security. Okay, cyber security, right? So there can be cyber attacks which can have an impact on our network, right? What else? What else can be there? There can be accidents, right, which can have an impact on life, limb, right? Pandemic, of course, we're just sort of getting out of one, right? Okay, so if we're getting out of a pandemic, which is had a very adverse impact on us. There can be, terrorist attacks, right? Okay, government audits, okay, loss of time, accidents which result into loss of time, or or optimization, okay, changes in societal acceptance for certain practices. Absolutely, what was accepted probably earlier is not accepted now, right? So you need to make process changes. Absolutely great, thank you so much. Let's quickly look at it one by one, right? So if we have to sort of narrow it down, there can be fires, right, or incidents related to fire which can have widespread damage. It can be within your own premises, it can be in the neighborhood, right? There can be environmental disasters, we spoke about it, pollution, waste, right? There can be climate and natural disasters, right? It can be heat waves, sandstorms, floods, we just spoke, earthquake, cyclone, anything that can have an impact on the asset and people that is there, right? There can be health and safety issues, there can be pandemic, can be labor issues, there can be strikes for various reasons. People perceive it as unfair dismissal. There can be restructuring, relocation. People do not want to go somewhere. There can be an issue, right? There can be ethnic and social activism, which can have an impact on business, right? There can be violence and riots. You can have social political issues. You can have war. We have seen, in today's scenario, when we are so interconnected, we are all dependent across each other, with each other. A war in Ukraine has having an impact all across the world. The repercussions can be felt all across, right? Right. So that becomes a challenge, right? Your supply chain gets disturbed. Your the prices of goods start rising. Your say crude prices start fluctuating, right? So everything starts having an impact on day-to-day living, on the employees and on the business. Technology is another aspect. Everything is open today. Your social media is there. There can be cybersecurity breaches. There can be disruptions. There can be utilities failure, right? So all these can be having an impact. We can have reputational crisis. It can be malicious ones. It can be deliberate, putting out information which are false, but it has ramifications. People tend, a lie spoken over and over again starts becoming the truth. And especially in the times of social media, when we sort of don't verify the kind of news that we get, we tend to keep forwarding stuff. At times it becomes a problem, and it can actually have a major impact on reputation of an organization. There can be sabotages, insider risk. It's said that 67% of the threat, comes in from inside, either knowingly or unknowingly, right? But 67% is a very large number, right? So that is something that we need to guard against. Of course, there can be incidents related to terrorism, and there is also information overload in today's scenario. We get a deluge of information which we don't know what to do, what to keep with us, what to verify, what to move ahead, on what to act and what not to act, right? So there's so many things, and there's just one list. There can be many other wherein an organization needs to take care of, an organization needs to be aware of and manage the risk, right? So if all these things are there, wherein we need to manage as security professionals, as people who are looking at business continuity, people who are looking at the business overall, right? How do we go about being resilient, right? So suppose if I have to say, okay, if all the risks that we spoke about, all the threats which are there, what is it? What is the first thing that you would want to do as an organization, right? If you want to be resilient, can you just quickly put it in the chat box as to what is it? Be rational, okay? Be rational. Understand what is what. Absolutely right. Keep an open mind, right? Don't get fixated that, okay, probably only this can happen to our organization, or this cannot happen. This will not happen. Okay, diversify. Absolutely. When you diversify, what are you doing? You are distributing the risk. Great points. Understanding of historical events in the geographical location, right? What is the past? What has been the past trend? Based on the past trend, can I predict or can I interpret what is going to happen next? Absolutely great. Have an efficient risk management plan. Summing it up, very nice. Continuity plan, right? Plan accordingly and plan. Absolutely great. Eyes and ears open. I think superb. I think more you all have covered, what is required, and that's great. Pay attention to the market, be ready for worst case, look at the future. Absolutely great. Okay, quickly. So let me, sort of move ahead from here. Great points, all covered. Absolutely great, right? First thing is assess what you want to cover. What is the risk for you, for the organization? What may be, what risks are there for the neighboring location may not be applicable to you, because a lot of dependencies are there. What is it that your organization into? What are the kind of people that you have? What is the kind of facility that you have, right? What location are you based out of? Therefore, you need to assess your risks, right? Assess the impact of that risk. What is the impact going to be? Is it going to be only financial? Is it going to be impacting on lives? Is it going to have a widespread damage on environment? What is going to be the impact? What is going to be the loss? At the end of the day, in terms of organization, we always calculate in terms of financial losses. So what is it that you can take on and what is it that you cannot, right? Identify what are the contingencies. So, right, okay, when you are assessing your risks, what are you assessing? You are assessing what is the threat. You are assessing what are your vulnerabilities, right? How attractive your assets are there for a perpetrator. At the end of the day, not everybody can do everything everywhere. I may have the intent, but do I have the capability? And if I have the capability, do I have the intent? If I have both, is the asset vulnerable enough that I can go and do something there, right? So all these come out, give out the options, give out the scenarios as to what exactly can happen. When you said open mind, keep your eyes and ears 24/7 open, plan, all these things comes into play. Identify what can happen, do what if scenarios. Okay, if there is something, if there is a fire in location A, then what? Then what happens? What if the location B, there is no route to come inside? If the fire brigade people cannot come inside, then what? So that's how you start thinking of various contingency scenarios, right? Once you have identified all the scenarios, right, you build your risk management and resiliency plan as to how you are going to go about doing your routine operations, managing your risks or managing your operations in routine manner. And if something goes out of the ordinary, there is an emergency, there is an incident, there is a crisis, how are you going to manage your operations, right? So all these things, again, you need to plan for that. And once you have done your planning, again, a very important aspect of it is train the people, right? You might make a plan, but if people are not aware how to, react in a situation, how to react to an incident, the plan will not work. Therefore, people, every low-most employees, be it anyone, everybody has to be here, starting from decision makers right up till the last person on ground. They need to be aware. Therefore, you need to train, you need to practice, you need to do tabletop exercises, you need to do mock drills, You need to do, constant thinking as to why, how can I improve it? Will it sustain in the actual environment? We were carrying out a scenario, a mock drill exercise for a very important, a large conglomerate actually. And one of the locations is in a low-lying area, right? Where, and it rains heavily there and tendency to get flooded. We were doing this exercise, and of course, the situation played up was for floods. And they said, okay, we'll get boats. We have those inflatable boats, and we will use that. And we needed around 14 boats to take out all the people who were there inside. When we actually calculated the number of boats existing on ground, it was just one. So in actual, if something would have happened at that particular point of time, people would have got stuck. People would have probably, there would have been serious ramifications. And there were some senior people, very senior level management people who were there inside. Therefore, it's very important to carry out these drills, train people, right? And then carry out your various reviews and revision as you go along, doing all these drills. So the process needs to get followed. That is very, very important, right? How do we go about doing it? Exactly the way, I was talking about. So you understand the various concerns, understands the needs, understand what are the expectations, come out with a assessment methodology which is appropriate for that particular location. Now, there are various methodologies which are applicable. There can be a ISO methodology. There can be something which is for petroleum and manufacturing sector, chemical sector. What works where needs to be identified or needs to be collated together and make that. That is very, very important, right? Using of pestle and SWOT, absolutely. Where it works, you will use pestle and SWOT. That is also very important. Plus, we'll be talking about a few of it later also. Disaster response team, readily available for that, right? I'll quickly also put down this point. From your organization, the kind of incident that you are expecting, and till such time the response team is able to reach that location, that time frame, is there something that we can do? We talk about a golden hour. The sooner we can respond to something, the soonest we have responders on ground, better are the chances of saving people, saving lives, managing the situation, right? So maybe we need to plan for that particular period of time. That's very important. Understanding risk appetite, absolutely important, right? If we don't understand our risk appetite, we will not be able to work it out, right? Select the right team, select the right tools, carry out a complete assessment, right? Somebody said, don't be narrow-minded. We were just discussing it earlier. Keep your eyes, it has to be a complete holistic thing. You can't say, oh, probably this is not going to happen to me, so let's not even carry out an assessment for this. No, that is not done. We should do a 360-degree, right? Accurate reporting and presentation, very important. What is there is there, what is not there is not there. Let's identify it now so that we can cater for it. Otherwise, when it is required, it will not be available to us. I gave you an example, right? And at the end of the day, the solutions have to be viable and cost effective. Many times, we speak about best in class, best in business. The best in class, best in business may not be the best for us or most ideally suitable for us, right? Because of probably the location, probably the budget, probably the requirement. Sometimes it starts becoming an impediment for business requirements. So that's something that we need to keep in mind, right? The aim being that nothing should get missed. Every vulnerability should be identified. Every risk should be, rated, and solution made for every risk that has been identified, right? We are talking about certain methodologies. Generally, the methodologies that you use, that we have the ISO 31000, which is for enterprise level risk management. So you call out something which is an ISO 3110, which has got certain tools, techniques, and other relevant ISO standards which are there. If it's a chemical manufacturing, petroleum kind of industry, you use the API, which is the American Petroleum Institute methodology. We can use Carver or FEMA, which is more American based, but identify as to what are the various vulnerabilities and attractiveness of a target, and then you put it in reverse. put yourself in the attacker's shoes, see how it can work, and then put yourself in the defender's shoes and work that out. Close those vulnerabilities, remove those attractiveness, right? And then there are also various other frameworks like ISO 22301, which is your business continuity one, your 27001 information security, NIST for fire, and other local standards which are to be utilized. So we make a assessment framework based on all of this, and then you carry out an assessment and design a risk management solution overall, right? How do we go about treating? Some of it we have also covered earlier, right? So you establish the context, do the threat assessment, carry out asset assessment as to which are your most business critical assets, carry out vulnerability assessment as to what are the gaps, close those gaps, carry out your risk treatment, and then you report and record that, right? We were talking about risk appetite. Somebody had just mentioned in the chat. Absolutely brilliant. Everything will depend upon as to what is an organization's risk appetite, right? An organization of, say, with $10 million worth, for them, anything, even a 1 million is a catastrophe, right? But a $100 billion worth organization, probably 10 million, 15 million may not be so much, right? Loss of life, asset damage, you have a backup for that asset. It may not be so critical. So, right, risk appetite is very, very important, and that's how your risk plan comes into play. If it is in the intolerable region, there is no appetite. You need to treat that, right? If it is in the tolerant region, you can treat it in the future or in the long term, or you can transfer. There are 4 T's that we talk about when you identify a risk. You either treat it, tolerate it, transfer it, or terminate it, right? So that's the way you go about doing it. So when you carry out a risk assessment, you get a template like this, wherein you have the likelihood and the impact. Higher you go, more the risk. The aim of risk treatment plan is to bring down the reds to the yellow or green, right? And the yellows or the amber ones to green, and the green are supposed to be monitored. Vast exercise. We can discuss it probably later when we have more time. So this is how we go about managing risk. Quickly, I'll just want to cover the kind of services that we provide. So we have a predictive risk intelligence platform, which is an AI-based platform for providing predictive risk to various clients, right? We'll also have a quick demo of this. After this, we have a security environment and safety environment study where we carry out assessments and consulting aspect of it, the audits. We have a very good security design practice, wherein we do it from right from the scratch, that is at the blueprint stage, or the if it is already existing, brownfield, greenfield, and brownfield as we call it. We are doing it for a lot of data centers, ports, offices, etc. We have a infrastructure and government practice, wherein primarily we are dealing with the government and large infrastructure projects. We have a training and workforce development program, very well subscribed, a lot of trainings that we carry out, master classes. In fact, I have a list. We are doing it, quite a few of them very shortly. Our women's safety program is again very, very popular. We also do gamification of these programs, very easy to learn. It's quite an interesting one. If somebody wants to see it, maybe we can do it later. We do integrity risk management, that is fraud risk management, a very sound cybersecurity program, under managed services program, wherein we provide embedded staff, specialized staff, which is to manage your command centers, manage your EHS, manage your security, right? So, and we are doing it for a lot of MNCs, banks, etc. out here. In fact, last year, our AI platform has also won 2 awards, right? 2 prestigious awards. So that's very, very helpful, being used by hosts of people across. Right, we are partnering more than 50 of the top 100 global organizations in over 40 countries in being resilient. Right, some quick references. I know we are running a little short of time, so we are covering more than 65 countries in our predictive risk intelligence AI-based platform that is there. We carry out security and safety audits for multiple kinds of clients: oil and gas, manufacturing, airports, ports, data centers, offices. We are doing security design, like I said, for ports, offices, data centers, a lot of trainings that is being carried out, right? Cyber is another a lot of specialists deployed across multiple MNCs, global MNCs, and they are carrying out this work, right? Like I said, we have certain trainings which are coming up, in near future. In fact, in September, we are having 2 trainings, which are heavily subscribed. Somebody wants to join, probably you can get in touch with Bright, and we can include you all. We have masterclass on data center security, security command center operations, corporate intelligence, another one on command center and corporate intelligence coming up in October, November, and again command center in November. So a lot of others like report writing, etc., predictive risk intelligence, which are conducted, right? It's very, very helpful, especially if you're looking at improving the resiliency of the organization, right? You can get in touch at that location. We have Colonel Randhir from Bright, and you can get in touch with me. These are the email IDs and phone numbers. So we'll look forward to connecting with everyone, even offline, for anything else. And right now, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat box. Thank you so much. And for a quick demo of the predictive risk intelligence platform, I have my colleague Ruchi with me. Ruchi is a intelligence analyst with MidCat, and predominantly working with the predictive risk intelligence team and the platform. A very bright person. And Ruchi, over to you for this demo. Thank you. And do put in any questions that you may have in the Q&A box, and I'll reply to that.
Thank you, Ranjit, sir, for that lovely introduction. I'm Ruchi Emul, an analyst with the Predictive Risk Intelligence team at MidCat Advisory, and I'm here to give a demonstration of our Risk Intel platform. So please allow me to share my screen. Yes, I hope my screen is visible. Could someone give me an acknowledgement? Same.
Yes.
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. So this is the home screen of our risk intelligence platform. Now on the screen, you will be able to view a world map with certain diamond-shaped icons. So now if you hover over these diamond-shaped icons, you will find out that these are the alerts created by our analysts who are monitoring round the clock. So if you hover over these icons, you'll be able to see a brief description of what the event is. For example, right now I am on an event which is talking about the entry and exit traffic restrictions in Pune. Similarly, we also have all the alerts listed on a vertical panel on the right-hand side of the screen. And if you hover over any of those, it will take you to that location on the map. Now, if I click on any of those diamond-shaped locations, I will be able to access a detailed description, impact, and recommendations of the exact event that I've accessed here. We also have a section on current updates and related events where you can download them in the form of a PDF for quick internal circulation to assess the impact of that particular event on your organization. We also have the feature of a keyword search and a filter search where you can go back in time at least 5 days, and you can also filter out using different risk categories and subcategories. Similarly, we have different graphical representations.
Ruchi, if you could highlight, some areas in the GCC or the Middle East, where you see United Arab Emirates towards the left of the screen. Yeah, now in the center. Just highlight any of these, diamond-shaped
Sure, sir.
objects. Yeah, so that we can, we belong here, so we can identify with those, and it make more sense, I suppose.
Sure, sir. So we have, for example, let me just click on this diamond-shaped icon. This is an event in Abu Dhabi, and it talks about the weekend closures for certain highways. Now, this can be important for employee commute for certain organizations located in this region. So we cover a wide range of events for all risk categories. Now, we also you can also access the map in satellite mode or normal for the convenience of our clients. And coming to the other features of our portal, we have an event archive section. Now, if you may have noticed, all our events are accompanied by a unique tracking ID. So the same can be searched for using this search filter. And if an organization wants to assess the kind of events that are taking place in a certain month of the year, the same can be downloaded using this section for quick internal circulation and evaluation. We also have an upcoming events section, which talks about all the events that are to occur in the coming weeks. Now, this is important for organizations who are preparing to face certain, scheduled power cuts or road closures. So they can build resilience. Since we're talking about this is what the session is for, they can prepare accordingly using this section of our portal. We also have an events calendar. Now, this is different from the upcoming sessions event calendar in the sense that this talks only about the static events, such as birth anniversaries or religious events. And the same can be filtered month-wise and also country-wise. So we have about 65 countries that we covered in this on this portal. Moreover, we also have a weekly forecast section where now this is an amalgamation of the previous two features that I spoke about. It includes both the static and the dynamic events. So all the protests or the flood situation and flight delays or road closures, whatever the event is, all of them are covered in this weekly forecast so that organizations are better prepared. And they can also filter the events region-wise depending on where their organization is. We cover India, South Asia, Asia Pacific, Europe, Middle East and Africa, and also the Americas. I now come to the kaleidoscope feature, which is a purely analytical tool. Now, we scale events and measure the impact using 4 quadrants, which is work on preventative action, document and monitor, the black swan and gray rhino. So you can, if you click on any of these events, for example, I've clicked on the Taiwan and China crisis, you will be able to access a detailed forecast, the development of the situation, and the interplay of certain factors and third parties that could have a disruptive effect on the trajectory of the event. So this tool can be used to forecast the situation and analyze how the situation can develop in the coming weeks and months. Similarly, we also have a resources section, which is essentially a repository of all the periodic updates, special reports, and risk reviews that MidCat publishes on a regular basis. And the same can be downloaded in a PDF format for internal circulation. I now come to the city brief section. Now, this is a part of MidCat's travel risk management services. Let me just select a city. So for example, I've chosen Sydney from Australia. Upon selecting any city, I will be able to access a brief one-pager document giving me important information regarding all the key features, the COVID-19 situation, the key risks that are prevalent in the city that I've chosen. And we also have recommendations which are general yet important and helpline numbers. Now, this is important to employees that are traveling to these cities. And this can be very handy when they want to understand the current situation and also, major business hubs or also hospitals if required. We also have an inbuilt query system in our portal, which we consider as a unique selling point, where organizations can ask us queries to our analysts who are monitoring around the clock, and we will provide you with the required information within a short duration. Now, this brings me to our second feature, which is our RHYME feature. It stands for the Risk Intelligence and Monitoring Engine. Now, this is our inbuilt artificial intelligence software, where you can see there are a lot of changes happening on the screen. And this is because this software uses web crawlers and artificial intelligence to populate events as they occur in real time. Now, this is different from the first screen that I showed in the sense that the first screen had events that were curated and analyzed by our analysts for your ready use. But this gives you raw data from open media sources and populates it on the screen. So if you look at the right-hand side panel over here, you will be able to see the kind of events that are currently happening across the globe. We cover about 65 countries and 5 regions across the world. Similarly, we also have a risk exposure platform where you will be able to analyze your organizations and the risks that are currently prevalent in the region that your organization is located. Now, if you look at the left-hand side of the screen, you will be able to see a risk rating. Now, this is not an arbitrary figure. We have carefully calculated this using our scale. Now, if you click on the question mark, you will be able to access the scale that we use. And this is calculated using the number of risk events that are currently posed to your organization and your asset locations as well. Now, this can also be filtered using current events or past week or the past month, so that organizations can assess the situation and forecast. We also have a section on distribution of risks. Now, considering that we have been dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic for over 3 years now, you will be able to see that travel risk and regulatory have a larger distribution on this map. We also have a small section that shows the major risk events and the top risk categories that are currently affecting your asset locations. Lastly, we have our COVID-19 dashboard. Now, this provides all important statistics relating to the COVID-19 pandemic in India. And we use only official statistics from government sources. So we do not rely on open media sources for these statistics. If you move further down, you will be able to access a metro city statistics section where you can which is also accompanied by an interactive graph and an implemented measures section. Now, this is important to organizations to understand what are the current measures that are implemented by the city or local civic authorities. We also have a similar feature for the states across India, which is also accompanied by an interactive graph and the implemented measures for that particular state.
Great, Ruchi, thanks. Apart from this, we also have the other one. This is India specific, right? So we can skip that probably. Yeah.
All right. And lastly, we have our documents, COVID-19 documents that can be easily downloaded from our dashboard. Now, this brings me to the end of my demonstration here. Please feel free to get in touch with us for a more detailed demonstration for all the features of our portal. And you may also access our website and get in touch with us via our website. Thank you so much.
So, this is something that actually will benefit organizations by providing real-time intelligence or external risks, which can have an impact on the organizations. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Ruchi. Over to you, Varinder ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Sinha. Thank you, Shruti and Ruchi, for such an insightful session. And it was indeed very engaging and informative, and I'm sure the audience found it interesting and useful too. For more information about the services and the latest updates on the training programs, you may follow Midcat Advisory and Bright Consult on LinkedIn or other social media channels. Since we have a time crunch, we are now opening the floor for our Q&A session. You may show a digital hand or unmute yourself to raise your question. If you want, you may post your questions in the chat box too, and we would try to answer that here. Are there any questions that you would like to ask?
Yeah, if I may, please go ahead.
Yes, please, Mr. Atif.
Yeah, thank you very much for the very insightful and you can say practical information that you have shared. It's very, very interesting and very, very, you can say prevalent right now. My question was, one of the presenters has shared various standards and tools and techniques. That's very nice. Question here is at times you have different global indexes or indices that you can follow to, kind of compare yourself to the various, market risks that are going on. You've got these things, for example, of the stock market, you've got Standard & Poor, you've got different other risk management indexes. So is there any particular risk management index the panel would like to advise us or share that, for different global markets, you can refer to these different indices or indexes? Thank you.
So, so if we are talking about the global indices, if we are looking at the risks aspect of it, yes, there are a lot of publications which come out for risks. And when we are talking about, so when we talk about these risks, we are talking more in terms of the physical security risks and the cyber risks that is there. Physical risks, one aspect, there are a lot of indices where it comes out. In fact, even we release that. We as MidCat release for regions. We do it for India. We do it for various regions, which can be referred, where we map the regions based on certain identified parameters, which can be like, your climate, your natural hazards, your crime, your terrorism-related activities, your pandemic, your demography, and a lot of other things. So there are certain parameters on which it gets defined, and that, of course, takes care of as to what kind of risk is being followed, or what is the risk rating for a particular region. It also is done by a lot of other organizations, plus international agencies like UN. It is being done by OZAC and other agencies. That also is done. If you are looking at something that is very, very specific to your particular organization, sir, as to say, for example, you have a spread, it can be in one country, or it can be spread across multiple countries. That's where the tool which was demonstrated, that can come in handy. So it can give you a rating of various locations based on the risks that you have identified. So it gets very specific to your particular organization, and it will give you a rating that based on those parameters, say how does the location A compare to a location B, sir. So there are multiple options available, and the generic has also very specific ones, sir.
Thank you very much. Perfect.
I hope that answers your question, Mr. Atif.
It does. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Atif.
We can connect even separately, sir, if you want to discuss it more in detail. I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha, for answering the question. So we have any more questions? You may raise your digital hand, or you may put it in the chat box, and the panelists will answer it. Okay, if there are no further questions or remarks, I would like to now hand over to Mr. Randeep for his closing remarks.
Thank you, Varinda. I think there is a question still to be replied. Can we monitor security risk by using social media?
Yes, I'm just typing a reply for that. So in fact, rather than typing, I'll just that will be better. So yes, you can monitor risks using social media. You have to know the verified news sources, right? So you have to know which are the correct sources and which are not. Like I said, there is a deluge of information on social media. So you have to know as to which are those verified locations from where you can pull these verified news. Then you have to be able to analyze that, right? Whatever information is there, to convert it into intelligence, and how is it going to impact your particular organization, maybe in short term or long term, is something that, again, you need to do. And like I was mentioning earlier, that's something that we actually carry out, and the tool that, demonstration that you just saw, that actually pulls out information from verified social media, also verified sources. We have, over a period of time, there's an old tool now. We have been using it for more than 5 years. It pulls out those information, puts it in the matrix of the organization, right? It's not a generic matrix which is there. It puts it in the matrix that has been defined by the organization. And then it gives out a risk table as to, if this is an incident that has happened, this is the risk category, this is the type of incident that is likely to happen, and these are the precautions that you should take because of the ABCD impact that is going to happen. So there is a machine activity that happens, and there is a human interface which is done by our intelligence analysts like Ruchie and a big team that we have, and we provide that. So does that answer this question, I hope.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. J.
I'm not sure if you're aware, SEBI has now mandated that each public limited company will have a risk management committee. I am an independent director in one of the companies where we do the entire risk management identification and resolution on our own. But I just wanted to bring this to your notice that there's a huge potential for you to cover those companies which can't do this work internally.
Absolutely, sir. And I think that's a great insight. And yes, so we do support companies, and yes, we look forward to people approaching, or rather going both ways. We would also be approaching, and we'll be very happy to help out any companies that require our services. Thank you, sir.
Thank
I
you.
think that's really, really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. JK. I believe Mr. Mohammed also had a question here. He raised his hand. And Mr. Mohammed, would you like to ask a question to the panel? Mr. Mohammed Satiq, would you like to ask a question? I believe we don't have any more questions here. And thank you so much, Mr. Sinha, for answering the questions. Over to you, Mr. Randir, for the closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Varinder. All the kind of the risks and the various kinds of solutions and services that we have spoken about, Shraddha spoke about, Ranjit spoke about, and indeed, so many of you participated. It was really heartening to see. It basically, stems from the very basic human need for survival. And like Darwin said, it's all about survival of the fittest. And who are these fittest guys, who manage to survive despite whatever happens? Are these guys the smartest, or are they the fastest, or are they the strongest? The answer is no. The guys who manage to survive are primarily those who are able to be prepared for various kind of contingencies that may arise, and are able to be more resilient by virtue of being able to reorient themselves and be able to remobilize their resources in a way that they are able to weather the storm in a better way. The biggest example in front of us is COVID, which all of us have experienced, and nobody knew what was coming. But despite that, while many companies perished, there are many companies who made record amount of profits. Now it is the same situation. How did it happen that some people were able to make the most of what the situation had to offer, while some of them perished? It's primarily the way we reorient ourselves and be able to be more resilient than our counterparts. So resilience has been spoken about a lot by Ranjit, and the need for resilience was very well highlighted by Shraddha as well. And when it comes to matters of safety, when it comes to matter of security, you need to trust only the best in business. And Bright Midcat happens to stand for trust. It happens to stand for competence to deliver the best solutions to your safety and security needs, which is essential for any organization or any establishment to not only be able to survive, but to be able to thrive in a VUCA world with its diverse nature of challenges that it presents to each one of us. So that is what we stand for. And we bring you very, very innovative and creative kind of solutions in the best possible manner and at a very, very competitive price. So what makes us stand apart and what makes us special is primarily the tech-enabled risk management platform that we have, which is managed by the best brains in the world, if I may say so, and the data intelligence capabilities that Bright Midcat brings to the table. I think these are the things which really make us so different from others in the business. And hence, this when you have to trust your safety and security to someone else, do turn to the best in business. And that is what Bright and Midcat brings to you. I thank you very much, Ranjit, Shraddha, Ruchi, Kunal, for the wonderful support. And of course, my friends here, Sarvin Pais, Varinder, and everyone else who made this thing and this event possible. And above all, my gratitude to each one of you for spending your valuable time. And for many of us, it happens to be a holiday. And that itself means so much for each one of us. And my grateful thanks to each one of you. My prayers for you to stay safe, to be happy, and to be successful. Thank you very much.